What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including we've seen one of the worst wrestling injuries ever, WWE leaving the Amway Center, WWE has found its new Cena/Rock, why The Miz became Mr. Money in the Bank, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Now let's hit the intro and get straight into the first story. Now our first story looks at the WWE leaving the Amway Center. That's potentially big news for the WWE as WrestleVotes is reporting that they're getting ready to leave the Amway Center, aka the WWE Thunderdome. WrestleVotes tweeted, "Thunderdome update. Source states WWE is set to leave the Amway Center by the 1st of December. Arenas in North Carolina, Texas, and Illinois were discussed over the weekend. WWE needs to find a spot where no team plays and able to house the weight and power requirements of the setup. A new arena is preferred as the weight of the Thunderdome won't work with older buildings. Also, a major travel hub is needed as talent will be flying in and out each week, not the easiest combination of things to find. The pandemic has forced some major changes in the world, including professional wrestling, as seen by the WWE running shows in its Thunderdome. They're making a smart move when they switch running shows in the cramped confines of the WWE PC and move to the much larger Amway Center, creating the venue known as the Thunderdome. However, the WWE's goal has always been to run shows with paying fans, and this may be the first move in that direction. Should the WWE move? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, a spoiler for a WrestleMania 37 match. Now that Randy Orton has won the WWE Championship, there's renewed talk of the Legend Killer defending the title against Edge at WrestleMania 37. Now you may recall the rumors earlier this summer about Orton winning the belt in order to raise the stakes for his rematch with Edge. Now although Edge's exact return date is uncertain, as Edge has stated his comeback is taking longer than expected, could just be a smokescreen by the WWE to hide his exact return date, the current belief is that Orton's win at Hell in a Cell is further evidence he'll defend the belt against the Rated R superstar. Dave Meltzer commented on this during the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer Radio, saying, "I certainly was given the impression tonight that Orton and Edge are the direction right now for that championship." Next up, some fallout from Hell in a Cell. There's lots of fallout from the recent Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Be sure to check out our in-depth look at the show, where the pay-per-view included 2 new world champions and a new Mr. Money in the Bank. But in case you missed it, Sasha Banks defeated Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship, while Randy Orton defeated Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. In addition, The Miz defeated Otis for the Men's Money in the Bank briefcase after Otis's former tag partner Tucker turned on him. These changes should shake things up for the next several months, particularly The Miz's possession of the briefcase, as he could cash it in at any time. But why did he win the briefcase? Well, stick with us as we'll explain later. Next up, the WWE has found its new John Cena/The Rock. Now that Roman Reigns defeated Jey Uso in a Hell in a Cell, it looks like Reigns may be leading a faction that includes his real-life cousins Jey and Jimmy Uso. Rumor has it that the WWE wants to take advantage of Reigns' white-hot run as a heel and transform him into a main event star as big as The Rock or John Cena. With Reigns being portrayed as the tribal chief, a claim that will likely set up his rumored match against The Rock at next year's Mania, they have the opportunity to present Reigns as a monster heel while also elevating the Usos. According to a report at WrestlingNews.co, there was talking creative about Reigns forming a stable with the Usos. The idea is that Jey and Jimmy will fall in line and do what Reigns says because he is head of the family. We were also told that this will play out with the Usos being reluctant at first, but eventually being completely on board with Reigns as the weeks pass on. All of this is meant to elevate Reigns to make him a superstar on the level of names like The Rock and John Cena. The storyline was also designed to help elevate Jimmy and Jey with plans for them to win the SmackDown Tag Team titles in the near future. Now, as WWE fans know, Vince McMahon has tried to elevate Roman Reigns into a main event babyface for years, but fans have never gone along with the way Vince pushed Reigns. But now that Reigns is a heel, fans can't seem to get enough of his new persona, and this could finally help him achieve superstardom. Next up, the worst wrestling injury we've seen ever. Ah yes, backyard wrestling, the start of wrestling careers, and as we're about to see, the likely end of at least one wrestling career. Now we've seen many injuries in the past, and some haven't been so bad, but this one takes the cake as one of the worst we've ever seen. Now, there's not too much background information on this, other than this being just a simple backyard wrestling promotion, and to be honest, we're not even sure who the wrestler is, but he climbed the rope of the makeshift ring only to fall and land in a way the human body was not meant to land. Yikes, just makes you cringe just even looking at it. Now, we hope that wrestler makes a full recovery, but man, I don't think he'll be wrestling anymore. He only just went off the top rope, kinda like Sid did. We won't play that. Next up, the real reason The Miz became Mr. Money in the Bank. Now, if you're wondering why The Miz won the Money in the Bank briefcase from Otis, the rumors going around is not only did the WWE want to take the briefcase of someone who in hindsight should have never won it, as in the case of Otis, bestowing the briefcase on him might have been good for a few initial laughs, but it quickly became apparent that Otis was not going to succeed in cashing in once the Universal Championship was put on Roman Reigns. But it wants to recreate the magic moment when The Miz successfully cashes in his briefcase on the 22nd November edition of Raw, leading some to believe that history will repeat itself. Some fans think The Miz could cash in the briefcase successfully, becoming a two-time champion. Again, the WWE could go the other way with The Miz winning, but then Orton retrieving it back before Mania. Do you think The Miz should become a two-time WWE champion? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up is WWE suing an NFL player. It looks like the WWE is taking action to protect its Stone Cold and Stone Cold Steve Austin trademarks from an NFL player's company. Heel by Nature is reporting that WWE is currently in a legal dispute with Stone Cold Jones LLC, a company headed by NFL player Chris Jones. The dispute stems from a soda line that Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle released named Stone Cold Jones Joda in conjunction with KC Soda. The WWE protects its trademarks, as letting someone else use them can lead to WWE losing the exclusive rights. It should prove interesting to see how the case is resolved. Next up, WWE mocks Jeff Jarrett's sobriety milestone. I'll leave it to the WWE to take a wrestler's personal achievement, in this case WWE Hall of Famer Jeff Jarrett's 3 years of sobriety, and mock it. Jeff Jarrett was on the panel for the Hell in a Cell kickoff show, and during one of the segments, Elias quipped that Jeff must be Spanish for junkie, alluding of course to both Jeff Hardy's past problems with substance abuse as well as Jeff Jarrett's. While there is nothing sacred in wrestling, it makes you wonder why they feel the need to get cheap heat like this on a regular basis, particularly when it comes to a retired wrestler. Next up, Chris Jericho talks difference between AEW and WWE. Now, during a recent edition of his Talk is Jericho podcast, Chris Jericho talked about what he sees as the difference between WWE and AEW. I think the biggest difference is kind of what we've been talking about this whole conversation, is that WWE treats the business as a wrestling business because that's what it's been for 60 years, from Vince's father and Vince's grandfather, almost from the old school carny attitude, and you can see that with the independent contractor, for example. It's not right, but it's just the way it is, like I explained. Jericho pointed out how AEW handles and pays for its wrestlers' travel arrangements from beginning to end, including booking flights, hotels, and when necessary car rentals. He then discussed how the WWE leaves the majority of travel arrangements to WWE superstars and expects them to pay for these expenses. Le Champion explained why he thinks AEW does this differently. AEW treats things from a sports team perspective. The Khan family owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, their own Fulham football club in England, so they treat the company like they treat their football team, and that's a whole different vibe as how the talent, the athletes and performers get treated. Chris Jericho recently celebrated his 30 years in the ring, a journey that's taken him through Japan, territories, WCW and WWE, and now AEW. And while you may not agree with his comments, there's no denying he speaks from experience. Next up is Mella still money? Carmella's recent return to SmackDown hasn't led to much following weeks of mysterious vignettes teasing the arrival of a female superstar. However, Ringside News' Steve Carrier is reporting there are big things ahead for the former SmackDown Women's Champion. Carmella's SmackDown return hasn't resulted in a match so far. We're told that Carmella's push is about to become evident, so they haven't forgotten about her, unlike others who they have. Whether or not this materializes remains to be seen, but Sasha Banks could find Carmella challenging her for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Next up, kudos to Evolution. Kudos to the members of Evolution, as Randy Orton's recent WWE Championship makes 50 World Championships for the famous foursome. Ric Flair has held 16 world titles, Triple H 14 and Batista 6, which added to Orton's 14 makes for an impressive number. It should be noted that they did not win all the titles during their time together, but it's a piece of wrestling trivia for fans to add to their databanks. And finally, congratulations to Sasha Banks. And last but not least, congratulations to Sasha Banks not only for winning her first SmackDown Women's Championship, but for becoming the WWE's third Women's Grand Slam winner. The boss can now boast that she's held the Women's Championships from NXT, Raw and SmackDown, along with the Women's Tag Team Championships. But there you have it guys, the wildest wrestling news stories and rumors you need to know. Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.